So, what is Smart Panda Labs all about? It's about the reality of the world that we live in today and the fact that brands who embrace customer intimacy, who really try to get to know their customers and get close to them, see faster revenue growth. With that being the case, we need to understand how do we accomplish that intimacy? Well, it's by meeting expectations. And when we look at all the data, expectations really come down to three fundamental things. People want ease of use, they want value, and they want relevance. And when those things are delivered, those three factors directly impact the actions that people take. In fact, looking back at the data, rates of repurchase, rates of purchase, rates of recommendation, the changes in their actual behavior are all impacted by meeting these expectations. On the other side of the coin, what happens when expectations aren't met? Well, we see it negatively impact companies where it matters most. And companies go downhill quickly when those things happen. So it raises the question, if customer expectations are so critically important to business success, why the disconnect? Why is there not a connection between these expectations and the experience that people are actually happening? Well, we find there's a gap. We find that companies have big ideas, lofty goals in terms of the digital experience, but when it comes to actually delivering on them, they're just not sure what to do. What causes those gaps? Well, it's fundamental issues and challenges around managing that journey from advertising all the way through to actually transacting, to becoming a customer and coming back as a customer. We know that journey isn't a very linear process, but when we think about it, it really comes down to a funnel, right? You go from advertising to the website, you interact with communications, you go to the store, and then you eventually buy. Now, when we think about that funnel, we think about what's the most important portion of that funnel. And that really comes down to that website, the store, the communications, because those are the things that people are using to make their decisions. That's what they're hoping is going to be easy. That's what they're hoping is going to be relevant. It's going to be valuable to them because that's how they decide if they want to move forward and actually interact with your brand. Now, companies have challenges in this place where people spend most of their time during the experience. Well, what are those challenges? Well, it's the fact that in order to meet expectations, you have to answer questions about people. You have to understand their behaviors and what those behaviors are telling you about them. What do you already know about them? How can you combine that with new information? Answering all these questions requires that marketing and IT and product are in strict alignment to be able to deliver the experience that people are expecting. However, often there are gaps in that alignment between marketing, product, and IT, and those gaps make it very hard to answer those questions. If you can't answer the questions, then you don't know what's valuable and what's relevant to those people. You can't meet their expectations, you can't show that intimacy, you can't grow, you can't get those transactions. So Smart Panda Labs exists to be able to fill that gap, to bridge the gap between what happens on the marketing side and the product and technical side, to be able to marry marketing expertise with technical execution and ultimately impact that post-click digital experience, and to do it in a measurable way that's going to drive profitability and lifetime value for the organization. Well, how do we go about doing that as an organization? How do we think about the process of being able to lay the right foundation and create the framework to be successful in that regard? Well, first let's talk about that foundation. It starts with discovery. We've got to learn the business and what the business goals are and what's driving those higher level business objectives above and beyond what's happening on the marketing side. Just what is the organization trying to do? Then we need to take that and marry that with customer expectations and see where those things align. Where those things don't align, where there are gaps, well, we diagnose and try to figure out what those challenges are, right? How do we be able to address those challenges? Then we have to design solutions to be able to fill those gaps and meet those challenges. And then finally, after we do that, we can begin to deliver. And again, that delivery is not a one-time set it and forget it. It establishes a baseline. Now, from that foundation, that new baseline, we create a framework. We start with building actions, tactics. Then we take the next step and we begin to measure the results of those tactics in the marketplace. And we use that data to create new ideas based on the learnings that we've gotten. Then we iterate on the build and we try again. It's this cycle, this framework of iteration, of experimentation that allows us to continually pivot and make sure that the customer is leading the way and that we're staying customer centric. In other words, that we're staying intimate or close to the customer throughout their entire journey and throughout how the customer in the market is constantly in a state of flux and change. So our recommendation is invest where it matters most. Invest where people spend their time. And that's where we specialize, that post-click experience, what happens after someone clicks on that ad. So we focus on that in two ways. We think about first optimizing the website itself. So in that respect, we provide CX research and conversion optimization services. So the goal there is really to drive revenue per visitor, to drive profitability. So we're both trying to create more revenue, but at the same time, we're trying to mitigate costs, drive down those advertising costs and operational costs by doing things that are more efficient and effective, that make more sense for the organization. Then you want to optimize your communications. We offer services in lifecycle marketing to make sure that those communications, both ad hoc and automated, email and SMS, are driving customer lifetime value. Because now it's not just about getting a customer one time, it's about building a relationship with them so that they become a customer, a loyal customer for the long term. We provide a lot of support across those areas, so not just in strategy and planning, but in content design, in actual build, in management and ongoing optimization, even providing platform support if new technology is needed to be able to execute on these different tactics. And then ultimately, we work with a variety of partners, both across omnichannel activation and personalization, but also across web experimentation and personalization, allowing you to be able to infect that entire post-click experience with these partners, as well as other partners that we work with from time to time as well. If there's anything that we can do to answer your questions, we look forward to talking to you soon. Please feel free to reach out if you haven't already and book a call with us. Otherwise, thank you for your time.